1947, we have received and analyzed between 1,000 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources.
Fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. That's not an LNS, is it? It's not an LNS, man. Well, if there's another thing.
We have spacecraft from another species.
We do, yeah.
How many?
Quite a number.
Unidentified Anomalous Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 18 of the Unidentified Anomalous Podcast. I'm Digby Furno, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and co-host, Tom Cortex Zero. And also, this week, we are incredibly lucky to have Vinnie Adams joining us. Vinnie, how are you doing?
Good, guys. It's good to see you as always, man. Really, really glad to be here.
Thank you so
we
much,
appreciate you, man.
It's great to have you on the show. Obviously, as I said before, I had you on my last show. We did a round table with Tom, so I feel like we've already been here and done this, and you've been on the show. But of course, this is your first time. I know you watch, so it's just really great to have you on, man. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
It's going to be a good conversation. I'm sure there's lots to talk about.
Yeah, there is. It's been an interesting one. It's been a great week. We've had loads of footage come out, some more dubious perhaps than others. But we'll get into that. Tom, how's your week been, my friend?
Challenging. Just challenging. Yeah.
I believe you had an issue on X, didn't you?
Well, I don't even know if I'll call it that. It was just like, I'm always able to like avoid almost any sort of criticism aside from like the people that just don't believe in UFOs who are like, dude, you're an idiot. Like that happens sometimes. But over the past couple weeks, there's people that I talk to privately, just like any of us. Vinny, you know what that's like. All of us out here know what that's like that are deeply involved in this conversation. And I had 3 people tell me the same thing in a 2-week span. It was vague, but I'm like, okay, I'm paying attention. I got the green light to be like, oh yeah, no, you can talk about it, put a post out about it, whatever. And I did that just to put some feelers out because I'm trying to figure out like what it is because I want to know. And I guess maybe the way I phrased the post kind of irked a couple people because in the post I had said this is not a trust me bro post because it really isn't because it was given to me by 3 people and then it turned into, hey, yes, you can talk about it. Yes, you can talk about it. Yes, you can talk. I'm like, okay, I want to figure this out. And I sat on it for like 2 days and I'm like, this feels like gatekeeping. I'm going to make a post. I would say the majority of the feedback was positive on that, but some of it wasn't. Some people were like, oh, this guy's this grifty shit. And I'm like, dude, that's not what I'm trying to do here, man. Come on. I'm like, read the post again. So I explained myself like over and over and over and over. And by the end of it, it all kind of blew over. But I just want people to understand that none of us are perfect out here. And sometimes we make judgment calls that not everybody's going to agree with. I'm willing to accept that responsibility. I still stand on my decision to put that post out because I felt like it at the time was the right thing to do. In my heart, I'm like, well, I would want to know. So I put a poll out about it too. Majority of people said that they would have shared it as well. But I just don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to bait anybody or like pull anybody's strings. It's not like that. Like this is a team effort. We're a big family, a big community. And I just want people to understand that when I act and do something, it is always with the best of intentions because I love this community. It's always like that.
Vinny, you must get this a bit though, because you must get sent some stuff. And how do you know what to sit on and what to share? Because you're always there's always going to be backlash, especially on X, because we've seen it this week. But what's your process? How do you know whether to sit on something?
It varies depending on what I've been shown or told or anything like that. I saw Tom's post and I was like, that's cool, because I put a post out yesterday almost similar. And sometimes, you're never going to please everyone, like Tom said. You're going to have your detractors and stuff. And that's just part and parcel of being in this subject, because we know what the community can be like, unfortunately. So I don't worry about it too much. I try not to overly make it sound like a trust me bro. I kind of put it out there sometimes, and it's rarely that I do. Normally I'll wait, sit on it and put it out when I've got something. But every now and again, like yesterday, I'll put something out, and it's more for me to put out some good juju to make it happen,
Right.
And forget what people think. You're going to get people that don't like it. You're going to get, if you sit on it and then put it out at a later date, you're going to get people say, you could have put this out earlier. You could have warned, it's always going to be some excuse to hate,
Well,
and I ignore
and Corbell gets this. I mean, we're talking about this later on, but, Corbell gets this every single time. The man can't do right for doing wrong. It's like he waits to make sure he has all the information, and then people go, well, why are you not letting these things out earlier? You just can't win. But Tom, the funny thing is, during your controversial tweeting moments, you actually gained 600 followers as well, which is hilarious.
Yeah, dude, I put that post out and went to bed. That's not like I was like watching it. You know what I mean? Like when these posts blow up sometimes, like I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't even do it with the intention of that happening. So when I woke up, I saw my follower count. I was like, I thought I was like half awake, and I'm like, wait a second. But no, it's true. But then it hurts when a little bit, to be honest, when someone then makes a comment and says, oh, you're just saying stuff to drive up your engagement, blah, blah, blah. And so on one hand, I'm like, well, as someone who's trying to survive and eat food and have a roof over his head, that's a good thing to drive up engagement. We do it with our show. I do it when I make a new YouTube video. Like, that's the point. But that's not what this was. So it sucks when sometimes people misconstrue what you were doing. But I think at the same time, it was a good learning experience for me. And Vinny, I deeply appreciate your words in the situation, because for a little bit last night, it was a little lonely. I was just like, oh shit, am I about to get blacklisted here or something? I'm like, I'm not that guy. You know what I mean? I'm really not.
Yeah. There's many more people that have done a lot worse on Twitter than you.
That is true. That is true.
Exactly. The one thing I will say as well is it's easy for people that aren't in the situation where they're told things to make these comments and that. But when you do find yourself in that situation, it is an internal bit of turmoil that you play with yourself. Like, should I? Shouldn't I?
Yes.
It's not easy. You have to make a judgment, and it's hard. And so I would just say to anybody out there, just hold back on the negative comments. Put yourself in this position, because I can tell you from the people I know, and Tom and Digby, if 9 times out of 10 these people are coming with good intentions, not purposefully to drive up engagement, all the things that we all want, but it's not solely for that reason. It's like we're trying to make a judgment on how much we can say based on what we know or don't know, and things that may come out in the future. It's a windy road that is very difficult to navigate.
It is difficult, and the amount of fake footage coming out these days at the moment is just ramping up. It seems to me that it is anyway, and we now have to sift through all these videos and make a judgment call on them as well, which isn't always easy, because technology that's available today, people can make these fake videos, and it's very, very difficult to debunk or prove. I mean, God, how long have we been talking about MH370 now? I mean,
years.
Yeah, quite, and it's just blown up again. But it's so difficult. It's so difficult. So anybody that's watching and makes these comments on X, just bear in mind that everybody's just using their best judgment call.
That's all it is.
Like us and bigger names out there, and if you're out there and you make these fake videos, could you fucking stop? Because it's really annoying.
Yeah, like that too. You know what helps too? The fact that we're discussing it here, because I feel like the message that we're trying to convey from our side, it's better received when you hear someone speaking it. Because how many times have we all text messaged somebody and they took it out of context because they're reading it and they're not getting your inflection. They're not hearing your tone of voice. Right now, you guys are hearing, I am doing everything with the best of intentions, and I love this community. Like that's the fact of the matter. And I am never going to sell my soul for anybody or anything. It's just not who I am. I wasn't raised that way. I'm a talent.
We love you, Tom.
We don't do that. Unless we're in the mob, but that's a different story.
You'll come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. All that stuff.
Give you refuse.
Leave the gun, take the cannoli. Anyway, excuse me, my cough is terrible. On that note, I'm just going to play a little quick advert, and then we're going to go straight into our news for the week. Are you looking to connect your brand with a passionate and engaged audience? Look no further. Here on the Unidentified Anomalous podcast, we are more than just a podcast. We're a community. Each week we dive deep into the UAP phenomena, bringing our listeners compelling content that keeps them coming back for more. With thousands of dedicated listeners and growing, our show offers a unique platform for your brand to shine. Whether you're launching a new product, building brand awareness, or simply looking to connect with a dynamic audience, we've got the perfect space for you. Don't miss out on this chance to grow alongside a show that is on the rise and be part of our journey. Interested? Let's talk. Connect with us at uapodcast23@gmail.com and join us here at the Unidentified Anomalous podcast, and let's make an impact together.
Beyond the mundane.
I had two buttons to press there, Tom, not one.
Yeah, I like it. That's a heavy responsibility, man. That's a heavy responsibility. No, that was a good job on that little ad there.
Thanks.
I like that. It was very Fresh Prince.
Yes, I know. Born and raised in Morocco is where I spent most of my days.
Some. As long as it rhymes.
Completely forgot what I was going to say then. Well, do you know what? You did the voiceover for the little documentary we put together last week, because I have terrible audio problems here. So to do that today, I was rushing to do it. And I just actually recorded that on my iPhone in the bedroom, and it actually came out.
It sounds fine.
I know. It's like, we'll spend all this time getting all this expensive audio equipment and just use my bloody iPhone. Anyway. So this week, yesterday marked 28 years, I believe, since the Virgin Brazil UFO incident. Wow. Ronnie Vinnie came out yesterday talking about some footage that he had. I stressed the fact that Ronnie himself questions the authenticity of this. I don't want anybody thinking otherwise, because I trust Ronnie. Ronnie's been on the show. He's a great guy. And I just want to stress that. But let's put this on screen and let's have a little chat about it. So, Tom, you go first. We spoke about this briefly before the show. You had your concerns.
Well, the first red flag for me was the fact that there seemed to be, and it could be a result of what's going on physically at the scene, if it were to be real, but there seems to be a hesitance to stay focused on the being for too long, because when, like, let's say you're using a special effect that maybe isn't super convincing, the longer you're going to focus on that, the higher chance you have of it being unmasked, we'll say, right? Like people kind of catching on. But when you do something like this, where you're kind of like looking at it and then moving around and panning back and forth, it can come off as more convincing because you don't have as much time to study it. The uncanny valley doesn't get to like seep into your brain as quickly. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's a red. It's a red flag, but it doesn't completely debunk it either. But there's something odd. This looks like it went through like some sort of post processing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like there's something that there's like an intangible that like my brain and my eyes are picking up on that are like, I don't know. I don't think it's real though.
Somebody's just said in the chat, it isn't real. Can we move on? It's like, yeah, do you know what? I get that, but I think it's really important to highlight the things that aren't real because it gives us the ability to pull it apart and show other people what they should be looking for to make sure that people aren't being caught out. Vinny, I know this isn't the first time that you've seen this. You've gone through it. You have your thoughts on it. What were the red flags for you? Let's say that again.
Yeah, so I was lucky. I spoke to Ronnie a couple of days before he dropped it. He sent me an image and then the full video, and so I went through it. I mean, the obvious stood out to me is the filming of a screen. It's not just the raw footage converted from VHS. It's filming a screen. There's no audio. There's what Tom mentioned with there's no particular focus on the being. And then one thing that somebody on X I saw found is that the VHS messiness actually does repeat itself. The exact lines repeat itself twice in the video. So right. I mean, if that's not
it's
obvious,
an overlay.
It's an overlay.
Yeah.
So, that
it's a Canva special.
There you go. There you go. So, but I agree. I think these kind of videos, especially when we've heard for the last couple of years or year and a half since James Fox released his documentary, that there is supposedly footage out there of this being from Virginia. We want to see things like this to kind of tick it off the list. I think that's quite important sometimes. I'm not saying we need to see every hoax UFO video that's out there. We definitely don't because there's so many. But when it comes to specific cases, I think it's worth having a look, letting the community as a whole break it down, come to some kind of mutual agreement to some degree. Listen, none of us have fully debunked it, like Tom said. It isn't 100% debunked, but it's pretty damn close. And I think it's worthy of touching upon for, 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. And do you know what? It makes me wonder how many clips have been put out there that have been supposedly debunked that actually could just possibly be true as well.
Lizondo has said there's a few out there that are real that people think are fake, and I'm like, gee, I wonder which ones would be. And
you were talking about one this week, Tom.
Which piece of footage?
The alien interview.
Oh, is that the Victor one, 1991, that was released in 97? I've been looking at that case this week.
Me too. So I emailed John Stewart because we're working on getting him on the show.
Amazing.
I really want to hear what he has to say about it because there's more to it than I ever realized. I always thought it was fake, even as a kid. Like I remember when it premiered, but there were things that I did not notice as a child about.
Now you did some editing on it, didn't you, Tom?
Such. Yeah, so I went into Premiere and I started messing around with like the brightness and the contrast because I was hearing that there was post-processing done that made the room darker to be more interesting, but that the original footage wasn't nearly as dark. And I'm like, okay, if that's the case, I might be able to see through some of this. And sure enough, I was able to see the being's like shoulders and arms. And what's really weird is that when the being starts to choke, and I don't know who would have thought of this as an effect because it just doesn't make sense. The being's left arm like starts to like deflate or like wither. It's really weird. I mean, I went from thinking that it was complete and utter crap to now I'm like, okay, I need to look at this through my like adult eyes. This is there's some weird things going on here. If you go and watch John's interviews about this, he apparently got in contact with the widow of one of the individuals in the video. He has all the emails. He has all the documents. He's working on a documentary about it. And he's not trying to, he even said it a million times. He's like, I'm not trying to prove that it's real. I'm not trying to prove that it's fake. I'm just trying to figure out what's what. Yeah. And I commend that. It's interesting.
Definitely.
It's a rabbit hole.
And John came into this trying to debunk it, didn't he, as well? He's like, I'm sure this is not real, so I'm going to look into it to confirm that. And I think that's a great angle to come in at when dealing with anything like this. But like you said, Tom, he spoke to the widow. She recognized her husband in the video. I think he had a surgical mask on, and because she said she could recognize the nose and the eyes. That's my husband, who was,
she's like 87,
vetted. Yeah. There's things like the monitoring equipment has a beep when it's measuring. I don't know if it's the heart rate or some physiological part of the being that actually is correct according to experts. There are things like that. I always looked at it. I looked at it years ago, and I always thought there were issues more with Victor the whistleblower than there were the video. So
I agree.
I came back into it earlier this week. I was having a conversation with DJ from Calling All Beings. He'd looked at it. I thought, do you know what? I'll have another look. I watched a few interviews last night. The one with Richard Dolan and Jon Stewart. I watched that, and you start to think, man, I'm not as sure as I used to be. So it's really serendipitous that we all seem to be looking into it again. It's great.
Weird. It's weird that Sheehan had also, in the same week that I discovered that John was kind of making the rounds, Sheehan said that there is footage of an interview with a being. And then I'm like, well, where have I seen that before? And now all of a sudden there's all this new information. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. And then when you find out the vetting that they did for Victor himself, I'm like, if that guy was an actor, the chain of custody would be really like, it would just be short. You wouldn't find all of these different like letters that were sent and faxes, all these different things where they're trying to figure out who this guy is. And they said he was like a pain in the ass. And like, I'm like, maybe he wasn't an actor. That's really weird. And he originally went to Fox.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to deal with him. He walked across the street to some newsstand and he saw some VHS tapes. He saw the company on the side of it. And he's like, well, no one's really ever heard of them. Let me deal with them instead. And that's what ended up happening, apparently. And there's instrumentation, like you were saying, the heart monitor. So normally, like our heart monitors go from left to right. So this thing was up and down, and it's like a customized machine that was built. I get if it's real to match the morphology of the being. It's like, why the hell would they go through all that? It just doesn't add up right. Like, so I don't know, man. Like I was going to say earlier, sometimes you got to take into consideration that someone could take a real piece of footage, release it, but then put a whole bunch of post-processing crap on it. And then we're like, it's not real because look at those repeated VHS lines, when in actuality, it is real and they just tinkered with it. So it's complicated.
Or somebody has a legitimate video. Like, let's use this video clip that we've just watched, right? We're saying it could be real, but because all the stuff that's put over the top of it is fake. So the other case could simply be that the fact that a 3-letter agency get their hand on the clip and they want to make sure that nobody believes it's real in case it gets leaked. So they faff around with it, make it look like it's been faked, and then leak it out. And then all of a sudden, the valid information, the valid evidence has been debunked. Everybody's done the work for them and it's been thrown out the window. Easy job. As you say all the time, Tom, you know, they don't need paid disinformation because Twitter X will do it for them.
That's exactly it. It's smoke and mirrors that are built into the internet, like from its inception. Why do you have to hire a bunch of people to go out and make posts that defame and debunk things when there's people out there just doing that already that don't have, they think all of this is BS. Like they're not an experiencer. They've never seen anything. So they're like, oh, it's not real because I haven't experienced it. And if they were in my brain, they'd probably end up in a padded room somewhere.
Well, yeah, they also seem to really get off on it as well. They say, and it just, I mean, I mute them now. I can't see Mick West's posts.
Yeah, I just don't look.
Stephen Greenstreet posts because they just wind me up, and it just like I don't. Before I was engaging with them, and I was just like, I'm just wasting my time and my energy and my effort here.
I liked my interactions with Mick West. I thought he was a gentleman.
You've spoken to Mick West, haven't you?
Yeah, he was a nice guy. He really was. Now I will say though, if it is true what some people believe that he's had any hand in this whole Wikipedia mess with Ross Coulthart.
Yes. I forgot about this.
I'm sorry, man. That's going to drop down some points. Like, you might be a gentleman when I talk to you, but if you're taking the time to go and remove somebody's accolades from their Wikipedia page, you're an asshole. Like, you're really simply like that's really immature. That's like that reminds me of getting somebody's password in high school to like their MySpace account and then putting something stupid in their profile. Like that's what that is, and it's really corny. It's lame. Yeah. Like it really is. It's so lame. Like why even do that?
A frape when it was on Facebook. Anyway, sorry. Right, let's move on to the next clip we've got here, shall we?
Corbell, they've said things that, like the Inspector General, or there's been other witnesses that have gone to the ICIG. Some first-hand witnesses, I suppose some second-hand witnesses as well. I was wondering if you could speak to that, or if you know anything about that, because we haven't heard anything like official about that topic.
I don't know that I can speak to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's my favorite response from lawmakers. You know, sometimes you ask like an Adam Schiff a question and he's got an answer for everything, but sometimes y'all don't know, and I love that.
No, I do know, I just can't speak to it.
I know, I heard that.
Okay.
Oh, good old Matt.
That's great.
But there's a tell in that video when he goes, I don't know if I can speak to that. He looks down. Now, eye movement is really important. It tells an awful lot. And to me, that says to me that he really knows something. He's looking away. I shouldn't say anything, but recomposes himself. Then he has a little smirk on his face. That short little clip tells us so much.
Yeah, he's telegraphing something there, isn't he?
Yeah.
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 To what extent, though, I don't know. But I think, yeah,
it's hard to
knows
say.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody recognise the voice who was asking the question? Because it wasn't Matt, was it? It was obviously a call-in.
I didn't.
I feel like I recognise the voice.
It was familiar.
Yeah.
I feel like I had it in my head
There was a few
earlier.
people we know, isn't there, on UFO Twitter who got some questions in, but I generally can't put voices to the names. I don't listen to many spaces and that, so I'm not.
No, I used to. When I had a day job, I used to put earplugs in and listen to spaces, but I don't get the time to do it anymore. So I don't think I've done one in about 3 months. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tells in that, and God, I would love to have been a fly on the wall during that skiff. But I mean, we went through some of the clips last week of the people leaving the skiff and the interviews and stuff. It's clear that they were told some more information this time, and that it actually was useful.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's definitely a step forward. I think it's a small step, though. There was, we had the positive reactions that some almost looked slightly shocked by what they'd heard, but there were still others who felt that they didn't get what they wanted. I think they were expecting big things, your Timberchets and a couple of others. So I think it's a small step forward. We just need to get the people with the full clearances in these skiffs now to really get the meat and potatoes of what's going on, because that information's there. It's waiting to be told to the right people, and you just need it. You know, the Senate. We need the Senate more on board than the House Oversight Committee. We need the Intel Committee, the Armed Services Committee. These are the people that can really start hearing things and then doing something with that information.
I mean, Vinny, you speak to a lot of people. You've got far more context than I do. I know that. But, you know, do you get the feeling that this is coming, or is it just everybody's treading water to see what's happening, or is there some talk that something like that is going to happen soon? Or are you going to look down and go, I can't speak to that?
I'm looking up. I'm always positive that I think we are still moving in the right direction. I haven't heard any inklings of the Senate getting any hearings or anything coming up. I've heard, the House might be getting more, which is great. Another small kick of the can down the road. But I think we're going to see more military witnesses and, dare I say it, whistleblowers coming forward.
I agree with that. I've been saying that for a long time, that it is just a matter of time before the first-hand witnesses
I was going to say first-hand witnesses as well.
Yeah. I mean, and I've heard as much too. Like, this is something that I've been talking about for months, that like the people that I talk to privately were the ones that put that idea in my head, and then I went and thought about it, and then it's like, oh, they're knocking at the door. And some of them have already been recorded. Some of them have already been interviewed by people that we all know and love out here. Like, I guess they're just waiting for the appropriate time to release some of those things. But you gotta think too, like, if someone is really concerned about their well-being, look no further than like what Bob Lazar did, right? And I know some people out there, a lot of people don't believe his story to be valid, and that's fine. But I'm just talking the general steps that were taken. It's like, you think your life is in danger, so you then go on camera as a means to protect yourself. Like, I think that's happened. I think that has already happened with some first-hand whistleblowers. They've seen some of the things that Grush has gone through and were a little hesitant. So they're like, hey, let's go meet at this house in this garage, and I'll talk to you, and we'll keep that recording on the back burner in case of emergency. I think that has happened multiple times.
Yeah, I think
Really
what
do.
people don't realize as well is that the time scale of these things, it isn't just a simple case of getting someone on a Zoom call or a StreamYard call, recording something and getting it out. All of that process takes a lot of time. I've been in conversation with some first-hand witnesses to, this is the thing I put out yesterday, to a very large UAP event that we would really want to see some witnesses. And just that navigation to get a date, they're clearly very nervous, and you've got to kind of tickle that relationship a little bit to keep them interested, because they could easily just back out, very easily back out. You've got to nurture them and make them feel comfortable. And this is over months and months. It's not just, hey, you're free on Wednesday to jump on and record it quickly. It doesn't work like that. And I think people don't realize that sometimes. So I just, and then when you say to people, you need to be patient, and they're like, well, we've been patient for 80 years. It's like, oh, that's not what I mean. It's so difficult to get people to understand. And, you know, I'm not throwing shade at anybody, but when you're in that process directly, it's like, it's frustrating because you are so eager, but at the same time, you do not want to mess it up.
I had the same thing. I mean, when I was just starting out, I got a telephone number and contact with a guy in the States who was releasing some UAP footage, orb footage. And it, you know, it was, he put one video out and it'd been seen by like, I don't know, 10 million people. And I reached out to him. Hunter something his name was, and I reached out to him as soon as I saw it before it went off, and he replied and he gave me his telephone number. So I called him. He's like, look, I'm really nervous about doing this. I don't want my face shown. I was like, that's fine, we could just do audio, it's fine. And then we arranged a time, and he was in the States and he could only do it at like 7 o'clock at night. So I stayed up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. I actually went to sleep and then woke up to get ready to interview him. He didn't show up. And then I got in contact with him. He replied to me 2 days later, sorry, I got nervous, blah, 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 blah. Arranged it again. And of course, he didn't show up again, and then never heard from him again. So I think people like this get really spooked, you know, because especially if it's people that haven't been involved in the phenomena before, they've been caught off guard, you know, this isn't the way that they think, you know, this isn't their life. They don't want this to be their life. And all of a sudden they're going to be put in a situation where, you know, they could be thrown into the spotlight. They could be brought into question. It could affect their family, their relationships, you know, everything like that. Sorry, my window's just blown open. So, you know, it is difficult, and we do have to, you know, be patient.
Yeah. And, you know, if this is something that happened to them 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that they could probably forgot about or put to the back of their memory. And then now they've got to bring all that back up and potentially be fearful of ridicule and stigma. Then they take a look at UFO Twitter and they see what a shit show that is, excuse my French. I mean, there's almost every reason for them not to come forward. But, you know, this is why we, like I said, this is why we nurture these relationships and try to make them feel comfortable and understand that what they're doing is valuable to not just the UFO community, but to the public in general. So, oh my God, it's a minefield to navigate.
This is also what was good about the whole David Grush thing, because they tried to discredit him, and the community has at large stood by him, and it's put all the other whistleblowers waiting in the wings in good stead, surely, because they feel more confident now, because they've seen this guy come out, put his life on the line for this cause, and the community just sort of like wrapped a security blanket around him. You know, they came out, they tried to discredit his mental health and everything like that, and everybody fought back, you know, and that is one of the times when us as a community came together and showed the potential of actually what we can do, rather than just wasting our time infighting and everything like that, like we do most of not the three of us, but as a community. And it's, well, you know, it's really important if we as a community came together and actually had the same goal and stopped fighting amongst each other. We get so much more bloody done.
Yeah, but it's very easy for people to say he's not a whistleblower. Whistleblowers actually give information out. He's just telling stories and that. But look, he's a whistleblower in the way that he followed the law as set out in the NDAA for 2023. He's following a process. That process is still in play. It's not over. You know, maybe a lot of these other whistleblowers, these 40 plus people that he interviewed, some who are, you know, we're told are coming forward, maybe they're waiting for that process to finish see how David Grush is treated, not just by the general public, but by people like the ICIG, the DODIG. You know, is it going to be worth their while to drag their family and friends through all this kind of thing? Because it will have a knock-on effect outside of just them. And so, you know, again, this is a process, and we have to be patient. I'm sorry.
That's a great point, Vinny, because people seem to forget sometimes that we're like in a new era, in a new world with this right now. Like some of these laws were just written within the last couple of years. So these are being put to the test for the very, very first time. So they're checking, rechecking, quadruple checking. I mean, it's not easy. And David Grush has said very, very clearly and directly that he wanted to come out and do the right thing and do it as legally as possible. Follow every possible avenue that would allow him to speak on this that was within the law and the Constitution of the United States that he took an oath to uphold and protect and defend. And there have been things that have been thrown his way that have been nothing short of despicable and mean, to be honest. It's like there's, I'm not going to say names, but there was a post I saw at one point that a certain someone tried to say that he was more susceptible to like imaginative stories and narratives because of his autism. And I was just like, if I was in the room with you, I would slap the fucking shit out of you for saying something like that.
It's Tom getting controversial again.
Well, you know why? I have two cousins that are autistic, James and Christopher, who I love dearly. I grew up playing with them. They were younger than me, so we used to go to my grandparents' house. And yes, they acted very differently, but I figured them out. I figured out how to interact with them. James now has a job, and Chris is a pretty fine guitar player. He saw me playing guitar. He thought it was interesting, and I'm proud to say that I inspired him to do something that he loves. And they have their challenges intellectually and especially socially. So when I hear things like this as being used as a means to discredit somebody, I got to be honest, man. It makes me just want to just knock the shit out of you, because it's like, did you grow up with that? Did you grow up with anybody that dealt with autism? And if not, shut the fuck up and don't talk about it like that, because that is, to me, is egregious, and there's no place for it.
There's also variations and different levels as well. And actually, if you're a high functioning autistic person like David Grush is, in many ways, that shit's a superpower. His brain, all it means. I mean, I'm dyslexic, and it's along the same sort of lines, right? I mean, ChatGPT for me has basically saved my life for editing and writing scripts and things like that, because now I can write something, and my spelling and my punctuation and grammar is terrible. I can write something, put it through ChatGPT, and it fixes it all for me, which is great. But high functioning autistic people, that's a superpower. It just means that their brain works in a different way. The same way I'm dyslexic. I'm not very good at reading and not very good at writing. I can read, but I find it very difficult to take in information while reading. But my brain works in other ways. I'm very good at doing other things. So it's the same with David Grush. I mean, that man holds information in like a sponge. Facts he remembers, everything like that. His autism.
Section 5, Title 3 on page 189. Exactly, I'm like, whoa, man! Like, I have ADD. I think everybody's got a little hint of something, right? Like I was diagnosed with ADHD in 4th grade, and I never let that get in the way, of my education and any of those things. It's like, you just got to figure out how to work with it. Everybody's different. Like, some people are tall, right? So sometimes they have to duck to get in a doorway, whereas some people have to do a limbo. But I don't, because I am not tall. I was getting there. You took my joke right out of my mouth, you son of a bitch. That's really funny. No, it's true though. We're all different, and that's what makes everybody unique. But where one person may look at that as like something debilitating for David Grush, he has figured out how to take that and use it as his superpower, and he demonstrates it pretty often.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. And it's like you were saying earlier, Digby, when we were talking about the tells and people looking down, and I think it was Burleson, and that's a lot different again in autistic people as well. And people saw that initial interview with Ross Coulthard when David Grush first spilled the beans of his his claims, that people were like, nope, look, there's all these tells that he's lying, and it's like people just wanted to just brush it all aside, not out of like logic, just out of like, no, we're going to debunk it. We are determined to shut this down without looking at it rationally.
Look on YouTube and search David Grush body language, and there is more than a dozen body language experts going through the whole video, clip by clip, tearing him apart. It's just like, oh my God. In fact, at the beginning on YouTube, there's more videos of people debunking him because of his body language than there were places actually showing the full unedited clip. You couldn't actually find the clip for all these. Yeah, anyway, it's ridiculous. But
body language doesn't tell you everything either, by the way. It's supposed to be used as an extra tool that you have out there with you. Just like a lie detector test in certain states may not be admissible in court. But technology's grown, obviously, and it's used really well. But it's supposed to aid you. It's not necessarily supposed to be like a be-all, end-all situation either, as far as I understand, at least.
Anyway, David Grush, if you're watching, obviously all of us love you, and we'd love to have you on the show. And I'm sure Vinny would love to have you on his as well.
Definitely.
In our dreams.
Our dreams. Oh my God!
Vinny's sitting there going, actually, I've already got it lined up in the background.
No, I wasn't lucky enough to speak to. I spoke to him on the phone very briefly. Ooh. That was good enough. Yeah.
You spoke to David.
I did, yeah. I was when I met met with Chris Sharp and Graham Rendell and Lou Elizondo in the summer. We kind of went outside the pub, and Lou rang David so we could all sort of speak to him. It was amazing.
Wow!
He was over in the UK.
Yeah, that was really.
We
good,
had
really
Graham
nice.
on the show too. Graham's a lovely guy, man. I love Graham. We got to get him back on the show. That was such a cool chat we had with him.
One of the best researchers ever, as well.
100% agree with that. I've read like most of his books now, and they are so well written, so fascinating. Like he's a horse, man. He works.
Absolutely. I've been to the National Archives here in London, in the UK, with him when he was writing one of his books, and watched the way he researches. It inspired me. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anything like it. It's incredible.
Yeah, we love Graham. In fact, he was our first guest, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, first. Roy was. I thought no, it was Graham.
No,
then Roy.
It was Graham. Graham then Roy.
It was Graham then Roy.
yeah, it was.
It's been a while now, man. God.
I know. And speaking of Chris Sharp as well, I spoke to him just before Christmas. He was going away. But he's coming on the show in February, so I'm just figuring out a date.
You want to see my Chris Sharp impression?
Yes.
Thanks for having me here on the show. And then like a little kid walks by. I love him so much because he's so like in the trenches. He's got just like an earbud wrapped around his ear. He's like, I don't have an expensive microphone. What do I need that for?
I don't need it.
Like he's too busy to do it.
I love him. He's brilliant.
It's amazing.
He's so good.
And he's just we should mention his op-ed as well that just came out in the Daily Mail as well, which is that when was that yesterday? There's a lot of op-eds coming out. In fact, you know what? Until about 6 months ago, I don't think I've ever heard the word op-ed before, and now there's an op-ed every bloody week.
I guess I have to write one now, huh?
Yeah, you and me both.
Another project to put on the list.
Right, I mean, Chris is obviously. I was just going to say, Chris has formed a good relationship with Josh Boswell and the guys at the Daily Mail. No matter what people think of the Daily Mail, it's their own words. It's not edited in the style of the Daily Mail. And Chris has obviously formed a good working relationship with Jeremy and George as well. That's been going on for quite some time, and I think it's a great thing. And people always think that they say like Chris is just their lackey to put out the information, or Chris just writes a mirror of what Jeremy and George say. It's a very good journalistic working relationship, and I think it's great. So no, I won't say what I was going to say.
And Matt Ford as well too. Matt Ford's did excellent work with those guys.
Absolutely.
Really good
Jim,
work.
aka Womble, has put, I think you guys should get David Icke on the show.
Oh, that'd be a hell of a conversation. I'll tell you what.
I have emailed. I didn't get a response, but also,
he's a busy guy.
He is a busy guy, and also, God rest her soul, his daughter died a few weeks ago. Didn't she?
That is true. I actually sent condolences out to his son.
David Icke's a controversial figure, and growing up, to listening to David Icke opinions, we thought he was an absolute wacko growing up.
Yeah.
And now I'm older and I watch the clips of David Icke and I go, oh, he was right. Oh, he was right. Like, it's a bit,
certain things, yeah. There's certain things that I still to this day, I'm like, I can't meet you on that one, David. But there's a few where I'm like, okay, that played out the way you said it would.
He was talking about the World Economic Forum and centralized digital currencies like 15 years ago. Anyway, that's not for this show. But anyway, let's move on to the wonderful John Stewart.
An email about 2 weeks ago. Says he was in the military. He worked for DIA, a three-letter agency that, Clayton, is not happy with me because I figure the DIA is running the alien interrogation and retention facility at one point south of Area 51. And he says that I once worked for Lockheed. I no longer do. I work for a subcontractor. So he was in the military, DIA, Lockheed. Now he works for another subcontractor. He said, I know why one of the confusions and the situations in the logjam in Congress regarding this NDAA disclosure and the disclosure amendment is that Congress finally knows and realizes that Lockheed has its own NHI, non-human intelligent craft. Well, I wrote him back. I'm like, well, everyone knows that the government, gave out material, metals, whatnot, maybe even whole craft to various agencies, Lockheed Skunk Works being one of them. He said, no, you don't understand. Let me finish the whole story. This is from him, not my investigation. He said that Lockheed eventually broke through, his words, of how to successfully reproduce a NHI, a non-human intelligent craft. They were so successful at it that they ended up not informing the government of their breakthrough. And at one point, this letter tells me that Lockheed actually told the government, that craft, and I'm being glib here, that craft, that alien craft he gave us in 62, we just can't figure it out. You want it back? And I'm being glib. And we just can't figure out the technology. We can't move it past. We're at a firewall. Can't happen. A complete lie from Lockheed to the oversight committee or who was ever oversighting these black projects. This is from the whistleblower. On top of that Lockheed created its own, and this is in the 70s, created its own recovery team where they were, this is kind of like two repo people trying to get two banks vying for the same car, trying to repossess it, that they were actually tracking extraterrestrial craft along with aspects of the government, whether that be NORAD or JSOC. Because Lockheed had developed advanced radar systems. They had their own aircraft and helicopters, and they developed this recovery team. And they also developed their own recovery team. So this team, listen to me very closely, folks, so that this team could pounce on their Lockheed craft that they reproduced that might have crashed, so the government didn't get it. Does that make sense? So we've created this really advanced extraterrestrial-esque craft. We've lied to the government about it because we're going to hide this and just use it for our own good, for whatever that is. And if this crashes, we need to recover it before the government recovers it. So
there you go.
Adds a whole new layer to this situation, right? So like the chain of custody still leads back to NHI, which is utterly fascinating. It's mind-blowing. It's a paradigm shift unlike any other. But now there's like a new layer to the onion where they started making like mock craft and we're in a race to prevent the government from retrieving their experiments, but it all still leads back to NHI. Like, oh my God, my head.
But what are the Skunk Works playing at? Because if this is true and they have developed and backwards engineered NHI technology, but yet decided to lie about it to the government, what's their intention? Because it will be the government that they'll be selling their equipment to.
Yeah,
you don't buy it.
And why has this whistleblower not gone through the whistleblower process? Why is he coming to John Stewart, or whoever his name was? Sorry, I forgot.
You think it might be?
Why is he coming to him? And it goes against what other things we've heard. We heard James Lukatsky say that they've managed to breach a hull. Well, that's not reverse engineering a craft. That's just managing eventually to get inside one.
Crack a
Now,
window.
are Lockheed doing something completely different to the government, and they've got through the hull, figured it all out, reverse engineered it, and are flying it around? I don't buy that. It's too convenient. I really there's too many red flags there for me. It's a story.
I tend to agree with where you're coming from. I would say that I don't disbelieve Jon Stewart in the fact that he thinks that he's telling the truth. He's very excited about what he's saying. You know, you can see it in the way he's speaking. It's like he can't wait to get it out. From his part, it's not made up, but I think he's being fed disinformation.
Yeah, I agree. I'd probably do the same as well.
Carolina says, ask her, Patrick.
That's funny. That's funny. That's my fiance, by the way.
Oh, that's fantastic. Hi, Carolina.
Congratulations.
Congratulations there. I had no idea that you were engaged, man. What the hell?
Yeah. She lives out in the good old USA.
So are you moving over to the USA, or is she moving over here? Well, here, I'm in Morocco. I'm not in the UK anymore.
I mean, obviously, it's a long process. I'm actually heading out there in 3 weeks for 8 weeks to spend with her, and then we'll go through that process. I think I'll end up out there. Yeah.
Hey,
live happily ever after.
I left the UK as well, but
good for you, man. That's awesome. Love is the greatest thing in the world, is it not? You know,
absolutely, man.
It's the most motivating thing ever.
100%.
That's the goal.
Is she into UFOs like you are?
She is. She's part of Disclosure Ladies, who work under the kind of Disclosure Team banner. She has her own podcast, which she's been doing for a while now. Yes, totally. It's amazing.
When we get to the end of the show, where like a lot of times I'll go in and really quick make like a ticker and stuff. We'll plug that because I love the idea of a bunch of chicks getting together and talking about UFOs, like, because we don't have enough of that out here. It is really like a lot of dudes, right? Like
next time we need to have your fiance on the show. Then
definitely should.
We should. Awesome. We'd love to.
Alien mummy wedding cake.
What is so frustrating is the fact that there isn't more female voices in the UFO world or UAP world, or if they are, they're not being heard, and it's really annoying. And I know if Holly was watching right now, she would echo my sentiments as well.
Alien chick,
that
UFO chick who I'm very, very close with. Like, there's a lot, and then Richard Dolan's wife. I forgive me because I always forget her name. She's brilliant,
Tracy,
in her own right. Tracy, that's right, Tracy. She's like a remote viewing expert, like. Yeah, man, they're out there, you know, and then Paige Fox, who we're gonna have on the show in February, who I talk to all the time, who's absolutely wonderful. She's gonna be our first female guest. Like, yeah, man, I love to see it. I think I remember seeing that advertised under the Disclosure Team banner when it was like first being put together. I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that. I think I may have even.
Yeah, I mean, they're predominantly on Instagram. It was originally my girlfriend Carolina with Brittany Barbieri and Priscilla Stone, Quantum Witch. Priscilla kind of has taken it, has kind of dropped out to do her own thing. So it's just Brittany and Carolina at the moment on Instagram. They will be doing more in the future. They're planning a YouTube show as well. Carolina joined me recently when we spoke to Diana Pasulka on my show. And she just comes at it from such an awesome perspective. And I mean, I'm going to be biased anyway, but genuinely she's amazing. So
you go for it.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
You've got a big smile on my face, and I'm already married. If you're watching, darling, I love you.
Your wife is lovely, Digby. She's such a smart and kind individual.
Yeah,
I second that.
She puts up with an awful lot of shit from me. So let's go traveling around the world, he says. I'm quitting my job, he says. I'm going to go work on my podcast full time, he says. She's there. Sorry, darling. I love you. I promise I will make this work soon.
She is a blessing.
She is.
So what do we have next, man?
We have this, and
I believe, have a few things to go through, huh?
Yeah, we do. So Saturn, the Saturn UAP footage now. Vinny, I believe you haven't seen this one yet, have you?
I haven't, so you'll get my first reaction on this.
Right, Tom, do you want to, you've seen it and gone through it, so do you want to talk through it?
If I had seen it on Reddit, and then I actually forgot to share it on Twitter. So from what I understand, somebody is looking at Saturn through a telescope. Now, if you look, you see all these little objects around Saturn. Like a lot of those are the moons. So
So they're not little.
right?
No,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of them.
little up against Saturn, maybe, right? Yeah, of course, they're probably massive in comparison to little old us, right? But there is an object, if you see it right by the rings there.
The blue dot. It's
Yep,
not the best.
that is moving very, very quickly. I mean, people have to understand that the distance that's being covered here is actually insane. And someone tried to say that it was one of its moons, and I'm like, well, how? I'm looking at all of the other ones, and none of them are doing this. Like, they're all like in a geosynchronous orbit with Saturn, so it all looks like it's just sitting still, perhaps. I guess you'd have to look at it for even longer to see that kind of movement, but then it stops.
Yeah.
And it now, at one point, I don't know if it's the quality of the footage, the clip that I saw, there's a point in time between when it stops and when it starts again that it appears to blink. So it looks like it's giving off its own light. And then it traverses behind Saturn. I mean, that thing is hauling ass, like whatever it is. Like Saturn is huge.
Yeah,
So,
that's what
I
I was
mean-
about to say. Somebody put in the comments here, seagulls. I love that. Thank you very much.
Oh, I hope so.
But yeah, I mean, Saturn is absolutely colossal in size.
It's giant.
So something, we can see it here again. Where is it? Yeah, so it's just above the white dot there. There we go. Blue dot coming away.
Like, is it possible that it's like a rock or any? I suppose.
But it also doesn't seem to be going in a geosynchronous orbit. It seems to
No,
be going
but then
in a
it
straight
comes
line.
to a stop. That's really weird, is it not? Right? Like it stops.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is if you look at the moons or the bigger bodies there, you're seeing a little bit of blue shift and red shift coming off it. This thing's blue. Is it just showing something with blue shift? And it's just something so far in the distance. I'm trying to go prosaic instantly because if that's a UAP, an object, it's still absolutely massive. It would have to be what we'd probably consider a mothership. So my brain goes straight to something so far away, and it's just, I don't know. I'm not an analyst of any kind of video, let alone this kind of space-based kind of anomalies. But
I
go prosaic instantly.
I have to think too. The weirdest thing to me is that it seems to stop, but then at the same time, to play devil's advocate, it's like, is it possible that in that particular area that will happen because of the gravitational forces that are at play between all of the objects, Saturn, or like a rift there where it'll stop you? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. I don't know. The fact that somebody apparently saw that in real time is pretty sensational.
Yeah, someone's paying attention.
Someone got real lucky that night. And there was someone else that caught it, apparently. There's another piece of footage floating around.
Yeah, there is.
Like that. It's not just one clip, so that adds a little bit more credibility to the fact that it's at least real. Because somebody tried to say that was CGI, and I'm like, why would you even CGI? Like, you don't even need to CGI. I don't know. It's interesting, though. It's definitely one of those things where it's like, it's good to examine it regardless. I think I'm 50-50 because it stops.
I reckon it is something. I just don't know what it is. is my
I like
guess.
that answer.
I mean,
that's really spot on.
It doesn't mean it's UAP. Well, it is. It's an unidentified aerial phenomena. It is. Doesn't mean it's NHI. It very well could be. It also could be a comet or something like that. I don't know. Mind you, it hasn't got a trail, but who knows the way that light is shining in it. If it's a UAP, I mean, what's its hull made out of? Mirrors. As well, why would it reflect so much?
Maybe it's energy based.
Yeah,
it could be gas from a supernova. It could be, there's so many things in space.
So much.
I'd have, if I was to if someone said to me, "You got to figure this out," I'd go through those, tens and tens of prosaic explanations first, speaking to so many people like Avi Loeb and people like that before I went to. Yeah, it's a mothership, and they've got disco lights on.
They're on there playing Saturday Night Fever.
People despite we have a UFO podcast here, right? Like this is what we do. I made a video about the Greys, like all of these things. But when someone, I want people to really realize too that like when someone sends me a piece of UFO footage, the first thing that I do isn't go, okay, how can I prove that this is NHI? The first thing I do is go, what is it? Like very general, plain and simple. What am I looking at? And I try to put up all of, like you said, the prosaic explanations. And I'm like, well, okay, that one doesn't work. That one doesn't work. And then when I've like crossed all of those things off, I'm like, oh, that's weird. You know, that's how that works. But sometimes someone sends you something and I'm like, yeah, it's probably a flare. Yeah, it's probably an airplane being seen from the front. You know, like helicopters can look really weird sometimes if they're coming right at you. Like I've seen it all. So if I say, hey, this is a weird piece of footage, it's because I've really looked at it. Like I never jump to NHI until I am left with nothing where I'm like, I don't know what the hell that is. I can't explain it, you know? And there's plenty of footage out there like that. It's everywhere, especially from like the 90s, like all those good old VHS pieces of footage. Some of them from like Brazil and such. Some of them are so weird that it's like, I don't even know how you would have faked it back then. It's mind blowing, actually.
I think people have to realize as well, when you're doing what we do, you know, in our spare time or for a living, you have to have an element of debunker in you because you've got to take footage on first of all and go, right, is this bullshit? Is this fake? And that means looking at it to see if it is fake, tearing it apart, and then making your decision afterwards. So, you know, it's not that, you know, when you have all these debunkers, we're the level-headed ones because we're coming at things going, right, how can I see if this is real? In other words, you know, what could possibly be fake about it? And then we come to the conclusion that, well, actually, we don't think it's real. A debunker goes to something and goes, now, how do I prove this is fake? Yes, it's fake. Okay, carry on. It's fake. You know, it's not, they're not level-headed. They don't go at it and go, how can I prove that this is true? They just go, how can I prove this is fake?
So absolutely. I mean, I get sent hundreds a month, mainly through Instagram. And, you know, I used to have a couple of friends who I could send things to for analysis. I don't have that anymore. So people will say, I've got this clip, or they'll just send it. And I say, look, one, I'm not an analyst. I can't tell you what you probably want to hear. What I will say is, report it to the relevant organizations. Enigma Labs have got a pretty good app now where if they think it's viable, they will get in touch and want more information. MUFON still are taking cases, because don't rely on me to hear what you want to hear, because I know there are biases out there, and I don't have time as well. If there is that odd one that's really compelling, I might roll with it for a while, but it's tough, man.
My wife has just sent me a message. It's a picture message on WhatsApp that says, when I say Netflix and chill, I mean Netflix and chill. Stop trying to kiss me. Watch this alien conspiracy theory documentary.
I saw that. Yeah.
I've been in that situation. Let me tell you, like, it is real. Can't confirm. Can confirm.
That
so
also
funny.
confirms that my wife is watching. So I love you, darling.
Love that. Here's you know what? I think this is a really Paul, our great friend of the show, wants to know what Vinny thinks of Chris Bledsoe.
It's a really good question. I've spoken to Chris privately a few times, tried to get him on the show. It's never really materialized. I believe Chris has had some genuine experiences with the phenomena. Absolutely. Now, Chris regularly puts out videos on his social medias. Unfortunately, I don't think all of them are anomalous. I think he's mistaken dust particles, potentially satellites here and there. I might be wrong. These are just my thoughts, I try and tread carefully because I don't want to come across as a naysayer or anything. And I'm not an analyst, so what I might see him filming the sky of something moving, thinking it's a satellite, could genuinely be something anomalous. But I think there is a little bit of prosaic in there. But I definitely think when you look at his story with the lady and all of those big things that he's known for, I think genuinely something happened there. And what it is, I have no idea, but it's strange. And I like Chris. He's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy. I'm reading his book right now.
we can't all get everything right as well anyway. So
No,
we might,
no,
we,
we
do
can't.
you know what I mean? We may back something
Yeah.
that later on is proved to be false. Doesn't mean that we're grifters and we're trying to push false information. It's just, we get caught out. Everybody gets caught out at times.
I think as well, I will say, if it's something where I would say, well, that just looks like a satellite to me, and when Chris puts his videos out, what I would like to see is him at least say, I looked through all of the apps to see what satellites are in the air and things like that, and there were none in that location. Yeah, we don't have access to all of the military satellite locations, so it doesn't completely, verify it still, but at least show that there is something there rather than point it up and go, look, they're here kind of thing. I find that a little bit, it pushes me away a tiny bit. Yeah.
Right, let's move on. So the next one, we've got some footage from a guy in the army talking about the latest jellyfish UAP footage that came out from George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell.
To weigh in on this jellyfish UFO or UAP thing. I've been using this same equipment. It looks like a Westcam infrared imager for about 5 or 6 years now. Got lots of hours on this equipment and looking at different objects through infrared. I'm afraid the most likely candidate, it's definitely a real object. It is definitely something outside whatever aircraft is recording it. It's not a smear on the lens or something like that. It wouldn't move. It would move with the target reticle if it was stuck on there. We do get bugs and things that stick on there, but they don't. When you move the lens, it moves with it because it's stuck to the lens. It's a real thing, but the fact that it doesn't accelerate or decelerate under its own power, it just kind of floats along like a balloon. This is probably a Mylar birthday balloon. I've probably seen 20 or 30 birthday balloons float up from parties, kids' parties and things like that, and this is exactly what they look like. It doesn't, even though it shows a heat signature on the imager, it doesn't actually have its own heat or cool. It's reflecting infrared light, which it reflects like it would light, and it would normally be invisible, but because we're looking at it through thermal or a FLIR imager, we're actually seeing the infrared reflecting like light would do, but we're able to see it because of it being on an imager that's able to see or capture that infrared.
It's reasonable. Look, two things that stood out there for me is that he said most likely and probably, which means he hasn't said, yeah, it's definitely this, because he's seen a lot of balloons and that. And that's great. That's good to hear, because I respect that. He's not just debunking for debunking's sake. And what I take away from that and add it to what Jeremy said and kind of meet in the middle, I try and look at Occam's razor that it could probably be a balloon. But then think about the testimony that we heard, that this was not picked up on night vision and all those other things that we heard about, that the military, they genuinely think it's a UAP because they, with all their equipment and stuff, can't conclude what it is. So it throws it somewhere in this middle gray area, and it's still there for me. So it's good to see that guy say what he said. And so, yeah, it doesn't move the ball particularly any further down the road with the case, but do you know where I'm coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. He also mentions that it seems to stick at a constant speed, so it's not accelerating or decelerating, by its own means. But that's presuming that it needed to accelerate or decelerate. It's just going at a constant speed. To me, that comment doesn't actually add any weight to debunking it. That just means it's going at a steady speed. And we can't also forget that apparently, well, as far as we know, Corbell and Knapp know of footage of it coming in and out of the water.
That's the biggest thing that we need right now. That would change this conversation. If that object really was filmed going into the water and then shooting out of the water at a 45-degree angle and just it's just leaving like that, that's not a balloon. And Jeremy said again, he said it multiple times that he knows that footage exists. So my question is, where is it?
I'm confident that exists. I'm very confident that exists.
You're confident that footage exists.
Vinny knows something.
Wow.
I mean, I'm not trying to tease. I'm just saying through conversations and there are reasons why it's not been brought out. Like Jeremy has said, they wish they could drop it all. He said that, and we've only got what we've got right now, and that's all we have to deal with. And if that's not enough for some people, which clearly isn't, great. and this goes into a whole conversation that I could have about Jeremy and George and what they put out. But I mean, we can get into that.
Well, I've got a bit now that's going to do that for us.
I was going to say,
Yeah,
let's
3.5 years to feel confident putting this out to the public because I'm fastidious is the word someone just taught me with my work. I don't know what it means.
I love the fact somebody just taught him that.
But like, yeah, man, you could fake anything these days, and that's the problem, right? You could fake any footage. So I usually and typically require about 3 times that I get a piece of footage, and I get it anonymously, and I set it up that way. I don't want a source that I'm talking with. I don't want to know who gave me video. That's a legal issue. So I make sure they send it to me.
Does that not call into question the credibility if you don't? I mean, you know the source. You're just not going to share the source.
So, but it's not a source. See, that's the thing. What I'm saying is it takes usually about 3 times for me to get a product, right? Like a military filmed video. Then what I do is through my own channels, not through connections that sources give me. I mean, I have sources in the DOD, the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI. I mean, you name it. And I'm not bragging. I'm actually making a threat right now. No, because here's the deal. Here's the deal. I'll know if there's fuckery. And so any engagement I've ever had with agencies, they know too, that I will know if there's fuckery. I'll find out if there's an active investigation. Of course, there are active investigations into what George Knapp and I have released, and good for them. It's an important job. The idea that if people leak stuff, you got to plug those leaks. I get it. But as a journalist, the First Amendment, the idea of freedom of press for public good. So I feel maybe I'm ignorant, but I feel protected because everybody I've ever talked to in agencies, their biggest fear is that other countries will compromise, will blackmail so they can get shit before I vetted it for national security. I've never done nothing wrong. So the whole idea is when you get this stuff, how do you vet it? How do you know? How do you know it's not fake? Well, there's a lot of ways to do that. But here's what I tell people. First conversation, if you're a source and you call me, I say, have patience on me. Don't give up on me. I'm on cosmic time, not on your time. Seriously. And I develop relationships over years with people. I then do my own vetting through my own sources, not through who sources give me sources. And then I bring it to George Knapp when I feel it's a good case. And he does his own process through his own contacts that he's made for over 40 years. If I put something out, you can bet your fucking ass that it is legit and that it is worth putting out to the public for debate.
He seems really confident in that statement. I want to say this, taking the last 10 minutes of our conversation into consideration and what's being said there. Jeremy takes a lot of heat, right?
Yeah, he does.
George maybe takes a little less heat. But at the end of the day, I'm not the one out here that's being handed footage to release to the public for said debate.
Yep.
And George, and this is my own personal opinion. George has been in this such a long time. He made his money. I don't think this is about money for George, and
nope.
I don't really think it's about money for Jeremy either. I got to be honest, man. I really, and I get some of the complaints, right? Like, no, look at the way that Jeremy, look at his beard, and it's like, well, what does that have to do with the information that's being released, right?
I'd always trust a man with a beard, personally.
And I usually have one. I'm rocking a goatee today because I wanted to see if I saw it a face. It's just like we do it sometimes. I don't really.
I'm not allowed to shave
issues.
mine off. Sorry, I'm not allowed to shave my beard off. My daughter cries when I shave my beard off.
I love
Sorry,
that.
carry on.
That's so good. No, that's funny. Jeremy, I think when history looks back on him, I think it'll be positively, and it's okay. Like if someone gives you a certain vibe and all that, but if I'm looking at just the bare bones facts, like he's been releasing footage. Sure, the footage is going to get scrutinized. That's the point.
Yep.
I think he's contributing to the conversation. I think he totally gives a damn about this. He's always been kind to me in our minor interactions over social media. Seems like just like a dude that I could just sit down, have a beer with, talk to. I don't have any issues with that. I think I think people should really try to put themselves in his shoes, or even, put yourself in my shoes for the past 24 hours. Like, he has decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to stand in the face of this scrutiny and this heat because this conversation is too damn important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's going on. I don't think he's as much of a shithead as people make him out to be.
What's
honestly.
the difference, though, between somebody like Jeremy Corbell and James Fox? Because you've got Jeremy Corbell, a well-known name in the phenomena, trying to get information out there, making documentaries. He does a podcast. And people shit on him all the time. Yeah. And then you've got James Fox, who, again, is somebody that's making a living out of the phenomena. And can I stress that there's a difference between being a grifter and trying to make a living out of a subject? Yeah. I'm trying to make a living out of this subject. I'm not there yet. I hope to get there at some point soon. And so does my wife. I'm not a grifter, though. And Jeremy Corbell, again, he's making a living out of a subject. His time is worth money. His effort is worth money. That's not grifting. James Fox is the same. Yet Jeremy Corbell gets a shit ton of heat and James Fox gets left alone. They should both be left alone because they're both stand-up guys, and James Fox's work is fantastic. And I love Jeremy Corbell's work. But why does Jeremy Corbell get all the heat?
James doesn't release footage that has been sent. It's as simple as that, because everyone wants the new high definition, amazing, conclusive video. And people see Jeremy putting out these ambiguous videos, which I think is great. Yeah, I think is great. And I'll be slightly brutal here and say to anybody that criticizes Jeremy, fine, that's your opinion. Go out there, get your own sources, get your own videos and do better. Then come back and complain. Very simple. If you don't like it.
Yeah,
come on.
Somebody said the same thing to me the other day about Tim Burchett, and he goes, "Oh, Tim Burchett just sits there on his backside, does nothing, and tweets all day." I said, and I replied, "Going, don't see you setting up a congressional hearing about UAP."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, come on, that's it. It's so easy.
Tim Burchett liked that comment.
Yeah, to throw shade from the outside. I went through it once when myself, David Clark, and small team released the Calvin photo. And that process was, for me, was a year and a half work. For David, it was 20 years of work. People don't have a clue how difficult you have to navigate, especially when you've got sources as well. If we released all the material that we have from sources, it would be a slightly different conversation. I'm not saying it would blow the lid off anything, but it would be a slightly more advanced conversation. But it's, oh my God, it's one of the most frustrating, difficult, it's hard work. I mean, God, people, just stop throwing shade from your little armchairs. Seriously.
Yeah, too right.
It's silly. I could
spend
say
your
that
energy,
in a lot more harsh.
Being a part of the team here, right? I want to ask Vinny this too, because I think this is an important question that a lot of people have in their own heads, and sometimes they even throw it out there. So we were talking just a few minutes ago about the fact that you're pretty confident that the footage that Jeremy's talking about that we haven't seen of the jellyfish entering and exiting the ocean, that you're confident that it exists. Now we have what we have.
Yep.
Why, if you had to speculate personally, why do you believe that hasn't been released yet? What do you think causes that? Why have we only gotten the first part, but not that definitive second part yet? What do you think creates those roadblocks?
I don't know why we haven't got it, but my speculation, which you asked for, would be that Jeremy doesn't have the footage in hand. Right. I mean, all of this was classified. I think Jeremy is treading that thin line, with the law, with releasing some of this stuff. That's some of the reason why it takes 2 to 3 years for it to be released from when he first gets it. I mean, that's all I can really say on that. And I'll add to that I was contacted last week by someone that was stationed at that exact same military base a couple of years later, so 2019, and he said to me he didn't want any information being put out. I won't say a name or anything. All I will say is that he said there was a lot of anomalous stuff going on even when he was there in 2019. He didn't want to tell me what or anything. He goes, just, this is what I'm going to say, take it or leave it. But it was very, very strange. And I mean, all these little tidbits point in a direction of something. I mean, I'm not going to roll with it as that means the jellyfish genuinely was a space aliens or whatever. But it keeps me like in that center gray area still, that I'm not just gonna let the balloon theory overtake it. Like everyone. There are a lot of people out there that say already that this has been debunked. It hasn't. You know, people are so eager.
No.
Again,
It's
I'll be talking about that
inconclusive
for an
at
hour.
the moment. Yeah, it's interesting. You've given me more confidence in this now, which thank you.
The one thing I will say is that if in 6 months we get more information, it turns out to be in balloons, and people point their finger at me and go, "Ha ha," I'll be like, "I don't care."
Yes.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We got the answer. People think that people have so much riding on this when they actually don't. They're putting this out there to get it out there. So what do you think? You know, but people think there's so much invested in it. And I think that's where, again, armchair quarterbacks seem to have this delusion that people are, you know, people are saying Jeremy putting these jellyfish space alien videos out. Jeremy has only ever said that the DoD classified this as UAP, and he's putting it out there as UAP. I mean, come on.
No, I'm inclined to completely agree with your statement. I mean, when I first started doing shows in the early days last year, I had a guy called Brandon on my show when I was flying solo, and he was a retired naval officer. He was in Iraq, and he stated he would see flying orbs going over battlefields, and you know, and it was just kind of a thing that you saw. Just nobody talked about it because you didn't, and if you did, you know, people would shut you up. You know, these things happen. I mean, he was on the back of a ship and saw one of them coming out of the water. And next thing, they're firing on a Turkish ship by accident, apparently, and people died. But his side of the story was that he heard that basically they tried to fire at this thing as it came out of the water, and it sent their missile guidance system off, and it went over and it blew up a Turkish ship instead. You know, these things happen, and our army personnel, you know, across the pond and in the UK, you know, people are seeing this stuff all the time. It's just they don't feel like they can talk about it.
Exactly. And then people do come to individuals, Tom, Digby, or me, and tell these stories, and some want to remain anonymous and don't want any of it out. Some, like, you can use the story but don't say my name. And this is how then when we get in that situation, like we talked about at the start of the show, we're like, what do we say? How do we say it? How's it going to be received if we put it out on social media? It's that difficult line that no one's perfect at following.
That's right.
Paul's just put a comment here saying, I met with a Black Hawk pilot here on the US Gov contract, and he's got some great stories of unexplained sightings.
I mean,
there's my dog.
A case in point, if I am successful in getting these first-hand military witnesses to come forward in a week or two for this big incident that we've all heard of, people are still going to complain, oh, and it's still only stories. And that's very true. It's potentially, it won't move the ball forward, but we're talking still about credible people who have everything to lose, nothing to gain. And I still see that as a positive step forward. I'm not saying this is going to be disclosure or anything like that. So all these people, again, that criticize and that, again, like, I'm sorry, if that's all I can give you, that's all I can give you. If you want to do better,
do it.
And I'd love to see it.
As has been said so many times, disclosure is a process. It's not an event, you know. And when will be enough, you know, because there will always be people that come out and go, well, it's still not true. And it's, what's good enough for people? Does the White House have to hold a press conference? Does an alien need to land on the White House lawn? Or, you know, when is enough for some people? And for some people, that is what it will take. You know, because... And
then you get the people that say it's a 4K HD video will be enough. Then you get the people that say, well, a 4K HD video can easily be manipulated. You're never going to please everybody in one group, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I made the post that I did yesterday on X that got a lot of really interesting conversations going. I'm like, okay, let's say that, you know, that there's footage purportedly showing NHI, and it was made public. What kind of evidence would have to come with it for you to be convinced that it's real? You know, and some people said, look, you know, I need a team of scientists, and I'd be okay. Like, if you got an international committee of the world's top scientists to go and say, listen, I'm putting my name and my credibility on this. To me, that's pretty good, you know, and then I can go and check that against their resumes. But that's what we're dealing with right now. If they come on television and reveal, a craft inside of a hangar, the first thing that I expect to see is people saying, "Yeah, it's the government, so they're lying." Even if they decided to tell the truth, they're still going to be accused of lying. That unfortunately is a symptom of this cover up that's been going on for so long. They caused this situation, and now we have to try to pull ourselves out of it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Right, should we go on to our last clip for today? So it's been flying around again. This is about the Buzz Aldrin post that came out a number of years ago with a picture of the Antarctic pyramid. It's doing the rounds again, so I just thought I'd bring up a quick clip. I've edited it down a bit so it's not too long, and then we'll have a little discussion about that afterwards.
Buzz Aldrin went down there to Antarctica, and he made a tweet which got screenshotted and saved by thousands of people, thankfully, before it got deleted the next day. He said that the people down here that were meeting were facing the ultimate evil or something to that effect. And there's an entire advanced civilization there, including some of the largest pyramids on Earth, right in Antarctica.
Why do you think Admiral Byrd and the Rockefellers were so much more interested in Antarctica, the South Pole, rather than the North Pole?
There is a situation that began to happen during World War II where they discovered that the Nazis went down to Antarctica and built a base down there, New Schwabenland. A lot of the world's leaders were there at the same time. They went to go meet with who? And Buzz Aldrin was invited. A space traveling, an astronaut goes down there to meet with who? He said the ultimate evil.
Pyramids down there are a lot, they're a lot bigger than the ones in
super megalithic. One of the pyramids is 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers of base.
Oh, wow. Looking into the Nikola Tesla stuff, and it sounds like Nikola Tesla got his information somehow from ancient Egypt. A lot of people say that the pyramids were some type of a power plant.
You look at Bosnia in Europe, there's a pyramid there called the Pyramid of the Sun. Just like there's one in Mexico called the Pyramid of the Sun. There's one in Bosnia called the Pyramid of the Sun. It's massive. There's tunnels underneath that are connecting the pyramids. But inside of this one tunnel, they found this gigantic crystal. It's called a K2 megalith. And on it is written in runes, it says, "We must stand in defense until we can open the gate."
There you go. I mean, Antarctica, the pyramids in Antarctica, I find absolutely fascinating. I find pyramids in Egypt absolutely fascinating. But the idea that there are these pyramids down in Antarctica just blows my mind, if that's what they are.
Right. I don't know, man. Again, Billy Carson, I'm not going to say too much there. I don't think I have to.
But
like this whole rune thing, it's like, well, where, and I'm just being honest, it's like, as interesting as that all is, where the hell are you getting any of that from? And the Buzz Aldrin post, man, like, I didn't look too deeply into that, but I feel like I remember someone saying that was like a Photoshop or something. Now,
yeah, possibly. I don't know.
The pyramids in Antarctica thing, that's different. That's different. Like, there seems to be an interesting offering of evidence there. Also, just by looking on Google Maps, there do appear to be pyramids in Antarctica, just like there really do appear to be pyramids on Mars. Like, I've looked into that pretty deeply. There's evidence. I did a video about it on my channel that, Mars may have been wiped out by some sort of nuclear situation. Like, the evidence is there. It really is. Like, it sounds crazy, but like, I looked into that, and it's interesting. But this whole like rune thing, and I have no idea what Billy Carson is fucking talking about. I don't know what any of that. Honestly, like, where does that even come from?
Yeah,
the guy drives a Bentley.
There's a grifter.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and he's well spoken and all that, and he doesn't know a lot. But I've listened to some of his seminars, and I'm like, it really sounds like you just went and paraphrased David Wilcock's work. Like that's all it sounds like to me. Like the source field investigations and all that fucking shit. Like you know what I mean? Like, and I believe in source consciousness and things of that nature, but I also believe people have taken that and written about it in such a way that they're so confident and it's super factual. And it's like, dude, nobody on this planet fully understands the nature of consciousness. And if you claim to, I don't believe you. I don't, because it's out. It lies beyond the atom, as I like to say, where it's like, I don't think we're going to actually really be able to measure these things or come to a conclusion about them with our current technology. And we may not be able to because it lies outside of three-dimensional time space. Like I believe in non-local consciousness. I totally do. I think it explains remote viewing. I think it explains shared dreams. I think it explains how people can predict the future and a slew of other different psi phenomena. But all that aside, these statements get made, but where are they coming from? That's all I want to know. It's like, okay, you're talking about a rune or or like a crystal, and written in some ancient language is this awesome phrase about defending whatever. Where is that? Where did you have a photo of it?
It's talking about things as if they're facts without actually providing any evidence.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
That's my problem with that.
But the whole idea of Nazis down in the Antarctic during the Second World War and all that stuff, I find it absolutely fascinating. I really do. Why would they want to go down there? Why are you still not allowed to go to Antarctica? Why is there bases on Antarctica? What's so bloody interesting down there? Why you're not allowed to fly over it? All this stuff. I find
it's crazy.
It has nothing to do with flat Earth. Can we just get that out of the way real quick? In the chat brings it up. The Earth isn't flat.
No, it's not.
You're not gonna hit the ice wall or anything like that.
No. But I mean, you may hit a wall of ice, but
yeah, I mean, the thing is, you are allowed to go to Antarctica. The process is quite difficult to make it happen, but the public can go with the right amount of money and the right amount of planning and everything. That is possible. But look at the claims and the interviews done by Linda Moulton Howe. She had the guy Brian, who was a C-130 pilot that flew missions across and said he saw strange stuff.
Over
you
the
have
big
Spartan
hole?
1. Yeah, the big hole. And you have Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 who found the black structure buried under the ice. And that, I mean, these stories are some of them, if they're true, are probably some of the best things. If they were true, would just be amazing. And I love them. And I rewatch some of these interviews regularly just to kind of get that little kick. Like, this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
But it's about time that part of the subject, if it was true, we got something from it. It's like Tom DeLonge and the Alaska pyramids, isn't it? Like, always being a bit like he knows something. But come on, it's about time. Like, because otherwise, these people are just going to be, called grifters and stuff like Billy Carson. Have you seen his hip hop video on the private jet? I mean, it's classic grifting. Like,
oh, it is bad. It's like when OJ Simpson made the music video.
I've not seen this.
Right?
Oh, it's bad.
Man.
It's bad. It's really bad. It's like, listen, having a lot of money, good for you, because I'd like to have a lot of money too. All right.
Sure.
But like, I don't want to take that path to get there. I want to get there because people were like, "Hey, man, I like the way your videos look. I like your voice. I like you. So I'm going to invest in you because I like you." That's it. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night properly knowing that I was like another one of these individuals out here. It's like, oh, I'm walking around with my gold chain and all this crap because I made up a story. It's like, there's just something there that just bothers me. I can't do it. I can't. I want people to buy my book that I'm writing. I am writing a book because they want to hear what I have to say and because it was interesting to them. That's it. It's like, I want to do it the honest way. I do. I really do. Because I think there's an energy there, right? Like if I really believe in like manifestation and positive, positive thinking having an effect on matter, like this gets into like the quantum entanglement. We're all connected. Like there's a lot of information there, and I feel that if you really do things and move in a certain way with good intentions in your heart, that I feel that the outcomes are positive, because good and bad are like forces in the universe that are immeasurable, but we know they're real. Essentially, like the tenet of my spirituality is basically good and evil exist. They are forces. They're immeasurable, intangible forces, but we know they're there. Weirdly, like they're in us.
Yeah.
So yesterday, driving to Marrakesh with the family, and my 7-year-old sitting in the front seat next to me, and he randomly starts talking about dreams, and he goes, "Well, what if my dreams are real?" And then he starts going on, "But then how do I know the difference between my dream and this?" And
he's turning into
I
Morpheus
am right now.
Love it.
How do I know that this is real? How do I know that you're real? I only know that I'm real. What if this is all a game? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, Barnaby, you're 7 years old.
Is 7 doing that?
7. I was like, oh my
Wow,
God,
I
you
love
are
that.
definite. Not that there was any doubt before, but he's definitely my son.
You know what?
Amazing.
There's only one person that reminds me of in this life, and it's me. I sort of, that's why I was.
He's not
always
your son.
A weird kid. No, he's definitely not my son. I can't confirm that. We don't have to go on Steve Wilkos to figure that out. But like, I was thinking about those types of things when I was a little kid, and I didn't have anybody to talk to about it though, except for my parents. My dad and my mom are amazing, but like my friends would be like, "What? Aren't you watching wrestling tonight?" Like, you know what I mean? And of course I was, but like, I'm like, but isn't it cool to think about blah, blah, blah? And they're like, I don't care. You know, that's why this is so good to have the podcast and be able to sit with you guys and have these discussions as an adult. Because if I didn't have anybody to talk to about it, it'd be pretty lonely, man. I'm not going to lie. It really would. I love that Barnaby's thinking about those types of things. So that's
I swear to God,
really amazing.
I love that kid so much. If you're watching, Barnaby, I love you. I adore you. He's
a
got
good kid,
the most
man.
amazing brain. And
love
when
that.
he grows up and knows where to focus it, he's just gonna really smash something. I don't know what it is yet, but he will.
I love that.
So,
I love
anyway, there we have it. We've gone through all of our clips today. We've reviewed everything. Where do we want to go from here, guys? Tom, do you?
There is that one last button.
Yeah, are you gonna? Have you got something for it, or do we put Vinny?
I'm gonna give it to. We're gonna put Vinny on the spot. Press the button.
Speculation station.
So,
big gulp.
Yeah, I like that. Indicative of the coming events. So, at the end of our show, which you may be familiar with, but for anybody that's not, we'd like for somebody on the show to pose a question for everybody to kind of contemplate for the rest of the day. It can be about anything. It could be about ancient aliens. It could be about God. It could be about whatever you want it to be, as long as it sort of ties in with the themes of the show. And Vinny, we're throwing you on the spot today, sir. I want you to pose a question for the rest of us to think about for the rest of our day.
Okay. Normally I would just panic here, but something I've been thinking about that someone said to me the other day in a conversation. I'm a big proponent of disclosure. Funny. And I say, look, whatever disclosure turns out to be, we as humanity need to know what it is so that we're able to work past it and become better, right? And someone said to me, well, what if it's bad? And I'm like, well, we still need to know it to get past it. But they're like, well, what if we don't get past it? What if it's so bad that it actually makes humanity fight more, create more wars and things like that? And, you know, as much faith as I have in the human race of getting past any roadblocks that, you know, are put in front of us, what if it really is that bad? What if what the phenomena represents is so far beyond what we can comprehend that it turns out to be something so scary? What happens then? How do we live, or how do we see our children living in that world? Because I always say I do this for to create a better world for my daughter who's 6. You know, I've had my share. I can deal with a bit of bad, but for a whole lifetime of someone to deal with something so negative, you know, how do we comprehend that? How do we comprehend something that could be so fearful? You know, I guess that's my question.
This is something that's been talked about a lot more recently as well.
Yeah.
It is coming out. And we played the clip a while ago with Tucker Carlson on Redacted. And, you know, they both seem to know something about it, the spiritual element of it. I think for me, for my penny's worth, there is a balance in everything. There is good, there is bad, there is dark, there is light. And for there to be a phenomena at all, there inherently has to be the light and the dark. There is going to be dark stuff out there. You know, the universe can't be filled with fluffy little aliens that are flying around that just want to do good to humanity and other beings.
Sorry, Stephen Greer.
Yes, sorry, Stephen Greer. Shove that in your pipe and smoke it.
I do appreciate that optimist view, though, but it doesn't work.
You know, we said this the other week on our show, and I did the maths. I got ChatGPT to do the maths. And if you had a box that stretched, a box, not a line, a box that stretched from London to Paris, equal sides, and filled that with sand, every single grain of sand in that box represents a potential habitable planet in the universe. That is a shit ton of planets. Yeah. So tell me everybody's good, because you're talking out your ass.
And look at us. We're the prime example of how evil exists. But
imagine putting the human race in a box and going, are they good or are they bad? You can't, because
they would say we're both.
There are bad.
They would just
we're both.
They would say that we're both. Now, my last video that I just did, this bit with this, on the Secret Keepers, very much went into a darker territory than I initially anticipated because of conversations that I had that occurred organically. But I will say, I'm going to answer Vinny's question. Like, what if it really was like that? Like, I'll throw a hypothetical out there. Like, what if we found out that, like, we were like a zoo, right? Or this is some sort of like interstellar prison camp for our species because maybe they deemed us to be too dangerous because we created nuclear weapons, and they were like, putting up the grid. I think that eventually, like with all things, I think we'll get through it. Because we made it through World War I, we made it through World War II, we made it through 9/11. We have made it through all of the trials and tribulations that have been thrown at our species since the beginning of time, and we will make it through this one too, because that's the pattern that I see. Because I think deep down inside there's good in everybody, and I think at the end of the day, good always does prevail. Despite there being a balance, good does always come out to be the victor at the end of the day.
Now listen, that's exactly what I always have said. But what I'm trying to say, and what has been put into the conversations I've had, is that imagine, or even try to begin to imagine something way worse than that. Maybe we can't comprehend anything way worse than that, but there is something worse than that. That's it's almost an area that we can't even begin to think about. It's worse than a zoo. It's worse than farming humans and all these.
I'll tell you what would
heard.
Really bother me if I found out that there was a force around me that had control over my soul, right?
Yeah.
What I mean by that is that I didn't have a say in like what my conscious experience would be. It's like, I'm here down here, not because I chose to be, but because something out there made me do it. And that, like, when I die, that it's going to be something I'm not going to enjoy. That would scare the piss out of me. And I would, because I'm afraid of dying. I've told people this on the show a million times, like that, the idea of death, as fascinating as it is, and I do study it, near-death experiences, Jeffrey Mishlove, all of that. It scares me. I don't want to die. I don't want to do that.
Well,
I don't want to fucking do it. And I know nobody gets out of this life alive. Now, to go beyond that, and if it's worse than what I'm even thinking of, like what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get it. I get what you mean.
Yeah,
on the screen
what I mean.
there. Sorry, on the screen there. This is a
though.
post I put up about a week and a half ago. Are we in the midst of a cosmic battle, good versus evil? There's been a considerable amount of talk recently about the darker side of the UFO phenomena and an underlying evil that seems to be all around us in the world, even in places we once trusted to be good. Where do we turn? Who do we trust? It's hard to tell anymore. Is there a cosmic battle of good versus evil? Is evil winning? I've never been overly religious, but I'm starting to realize that perhaps there are elements of truth in religion, and that what we see as religions are merely the way that people at the time interpreted what was happening based on their comprehension at the time. NHI have always been here.
That's it. Angels and demons, bingo. But it's just we all have different words for it. And this is what Tucker Carlson is thinking. I'm positive. because I think he's religious, and that's okay. I'm not saying that insultingly. It's just a matter of fact. But I think because he was on a round table with if you guys know who Tim Pool is, he's a journalist.
Yeah.
And they brought up this conversation.
Yeah,
it was really an interesting tidbit that they brought up there. This is what was alluded to. It's like, hey,
big time.
This has been around us the whole time. Sometimes we call it angels. Sometimes we call it demons. Sometimes we call it ETs. Sometimes we call it NHI. But it's this thing. We know it's there, but as humans have evolved, we've called it different things. Just like the flying saucer was once the flying shield, was once the flying chariot, was once a million other things in a million other languages. Go read Passport to Magonia by Jacques Vallée, and you will
the Chandelier UAP.
Great book.
You know the Chandelier UAP image that came out, yeah? What does that look like to me?
You mean the Chaos
Star of
Magic
Bethlehem.
symbol?
It looks like Star of Bethlehem. If you saw something like that in the sky back 2,000 years ago, you'd think it was a star that appeared out of nowhere. We've got to re-look at religious texts with a new eye on it, and go, well, hang on a second. If we take the line that we're assuming that UAP are real, NHI are real, and they've always been here, let's revisit religious texts. Let's revisit the past and look at those things with that in mind. And I think you'll find it'll answer an awful lot of questions.
Ezekiel's wheel.
There you go.
Adam and Eve.
I think it is so interesting to go back and look at the religious texts with that eye. And this is where I give the early seasons of Ancient Aliens a lot of credit that it does deserve.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
fascinating stuff there. The Mahabharata, the Enuma Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, it's all there, man. The
flying chariots across
it is all there. I have found evidence of what would be in our language discussions about hybridized beings in ancient Indian, like Sanskrit text, dude. It's going to be in a future video that I'm going to do. And Digby, I know you and I kind of have a project brewing in this vein.
We do. We have a few ideas, and we've got the idea of a sort of a more feature length documentary.
I have found some stuff
that
I did not know was there, man.
Covering this very subject. It's not something that's going to be a 10, 15, 20-minute video. This is going to take Tom and I a long time to do and research. And if anybody out there wants to get involved, be a part of it, please do, because it takes a lot of work.
Love it.
Collaboration. And the other one that I'm working on at the moment is a little documentary called Third Eye to the Universe, which is basically going to cover consciousness, our connection with universal consciousness, how we do it, and talking about the third eye, pineal gland. Is that the way that we connect with the universal consciousness? Talking about DMT experiences, all this sort of stuff. So that's something I'm working on at the moment. I've got a guru to speak to in Nepal next week, I believe. Somebody reached out to me on Twitter, so that's really going to be fun. That's my first guru experience. I've got an expert over in the UK who's a medical expert, but not in the traditional sense. He's not a trained doctor, but he takes an alternative view on medicine. His name's Glenn. He's going to be really interesting. I'm interviewing him next week. Really can't wait for that conversation.
I'm friends with a shaman. If you would want me to maybe
just chuck him in, that's fine. Yeah. Chuck a shaman in there.
He's done. I go to him every few months, and he does spiritual healings on me. Like he'll use different scents, and he'll chant certain things, and he shakes like different Native American instruments around me. And I had some really powerful, introspective experiences while with him.
Amazing.
Really cool guy from Russia.
But Tom and I, we're trying to create more of our own original content, like we did the other week. The video that we produced last week got a lot of attention and it did really well. So thank you all for that. But we want to create videos where we're also putting in our own content rather than just writing our own scripts and then having to use other people's content to back up the narration. So we're working towards that. So it's a nice, fun project for me and Tom in the background. But anyway. Guys, it's been a cracking show. Vinny, it's been wonderful to have you on board this week and go through the week's UAP news with you and much, much more. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Tom?
My pleasure. It's been amazing.
Vinny, I'm curious. Where can people continue the conversation with you, and what do you have coming down the pipeline, my friend?
Well, people can follow me on all platforms under Disclosure Team, variations of, but you'll find me on one or the other, YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter, X. As far as in the pipeline, I'm currently working with a group of people to set up this new charity organization here in the UK called Unidentified, which is focusing on mental health with regards to the phenomena and experiences, whether it be sightings or even as far as abductions and things like that. But it's a very serious, medically based organization. We've got a lot of PhD medical professionals on board, with a lot of good people within the UFO community. Myself, I'll be on the board of trustees with people like Nick Cook, Alex Dietrich's involved.
Wow.
And so we're in the process of setting that up right now. I'm excited for that. Other than that, I'm continuing with my own show on YouTube. This week, Nick Cook is going to be on, my next guest.
Awesome.
Lots of other things in the pipeline. Too early to kind of talk about it, but I'm always keeping busy and just keeping the connections good and trying to keep the community friendly.
Love that.
Well done,
always the goal, man. Always the goal. That mental health thing is huge to me personally, man. I dealt with anxiety disorder and some other things, so I personally appreciate that deeply. So it's nice to see that. It really is. There's a lot of people out here that need that kind of help, and it's good to see when people get involved with that, like UAP Med and things of that nature. It's just it's a resource that never existed, and I'm thankful that it's out there for the people that really do need it.
Yeah.
If you need a hypnotherapist, let me know. I will get you in contact with my wife. I'm sure she'd happily get involved.
Nice.
Vinny, thank you so much. It's been a wonderful show. It's been absolutely fantastic. And we both look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care. Thanks, everybody, for watching.